My Date from Hell by Murder of Ravens. So, a bit of a backstory. I'm 18 female from the UK. This happened in February 2019. I was 16 at the time. I got set up on a semi-blind date. We had seen photos of each other by a mutual friend. And this guy we will call Cameron. He was 19. Cameron seemed like your average guy, maybe a little into video games and anime and stuff, but overall, nothing my friend told me about him seemed off in any way. Our mutual friend gave us each other's numbers, and we texted for a night and decided to meet in a Starbucks the next day since we were both free. I never like to meet new people this soon, but I figured since Cameron knew my friend, it couldn't possibly go wrong. How mistaken I was. I arrived slightly early, ordered my coffee since I never like guys to feel like they have to buy for me, and parked up on a seat facing away from the door and pulled out my book. I'm maybe there for 15 minutes, chilling out, and I get a text saying he's here. So I'm like, great, I'm at X table. I feel a presence over my shoulder, and I turn my head slightly in acknowledgement. He must be here. Before I even get the chance to squeak out a hello, his lips latch onto my neck and he starts sucking on my neck. Now, I don't like people touching my neck at the best of times. I'm very ticklish and I get super uncomfortable by people even touching my neck. The few times I've had massages or hair treatments, I've been holding in my discomfort. And he's latched on my neck like a leech. And this man smells horrendous. Kind of like dust personified. I freak out and elbow his chest to get him the hell off of me. He lets go and looks at me with this weird expression on his face and laughs in deadpan. It's really, really creepy and I start to become alarmed. I ask him what the hell that was and he just says, "Oh, I thought it was cute." Cute? In what world? I try to have a conversation, but I'm like, okay, first impressions don't mean anything. Let's try and give him a chance. But he's just creepily staring at my chest. He says, "Wow, I didn't know Asians could have boobs like those. I better not let you go." Direct quote. I cannot make this shit up. I'm distinctly uncomfortable, but I don't want to just run away. He's giving me really weird vibes. So I go into the ladies' bathroom and wait for someone else to come in. I ask her to help get me out undetected. I don't want this man following me home or some shit. She of course agrees and lends me her hat and scarf. It is February in the UK after all. And she manages to help sneak me out of the back door of the Starbucks without him noticing me. He asked my friend where I went, but I told my friend to never mention me again. I was too terrified. I know I probably didn't behave well. I should have just told him I was leaving. But I was honestly just scared. Dear guy who decided it was appropriate to suck my neck before we had even said hello, let's not meet again. Hot Guy I Sold Coffee To by The Dark Wolf. For reference, I work as a barista in a coffee shop beside a larger store. I am one of a handful of male baristas at my shop. I am gay and very open about this. I wear pride shoes, I have a pride flag attached to my name tag, and I have a couple of wristbands with rainbows and phrases like Orlando Strong and a local LGBT plus center. So the other day, I was working my shift at the register. A gentleman comes up to me and smiles. I think he noticed the pride flag on my name tag, but he didn't explicitly mention it at first. He says he doesn't know what to order and asks me for my opinion. Now, I'm not particularly a coffee drinker, but I know what drinks fit what tastes. So I ask him what he likes, and I try to give him recommendations. As I'm talking, I can tell he's paying more attention to me than what I'm saying, which I am completely okay with. He was a shorter but well-built man, had beautiful eyes, a nice beard, basically the perfect DILF. Eventually, he decides on a super sweet iced drink that we have, and I go to make it for him. As I'm making the drink, one of my coworkers leans over and says, "I think that customer just took a picture of you." That was a bit of a red flag, but I thanked her and kind of brushed it off. I gave him his drink and he smiles. He points to the pride flag and says, "I love that flag. Where can I get one of those?" I laughed and said I got it from a pride event I went to years ago. He then said, And where can I get the person it's attached to?" I immediately feel a rush and I start blushing. But trying to act professional, I brush it off. He eventually takes his drink and sits at one of the tables. I continue going about my day, debating whether I should give in to this guy or not. Every now and then I would glance at his table to see him looking at me. No matter when I looked, it seemed he was looking at me. I started to get that weird feeling of hard eyes with red flags. Then I noticed that he hasn't taken a single drink out of his coffee. Remember, it was an iced drink, so I could see the clear plastic cup. When I have a break and go to wipe down some of the tables, I stop by his table and ask if he didn't like the drink, and if not, I could make him a new one free of charge. He hands me the drink and mentions he's not sure if it's too sweet for him or not, and asks me to try it. I politely decline, telling him I don't drink coffee. He's shocked and asks me why I'm working here and blah blah blah. As we're talking, though, his questions start to change. "So, do you lift at all?" "No, not really." "Well, how much do you think you could lift if you had to?" The job requirement is 50 pounds, so I guess at least that much." "Well, I've learned that it's good to be able to lift at least half your body weight. How much do you weigh?" Immediate red flags go off. There was something about the combination of the drink and the two questions that made me feel like I was being asked how much of a fight I'd be able to hold, especially if I was drugged. I've been drugged at a party before, and these things are red flags that I have learned to pick up on. So I quickly end the conversation and go back to cleaning up tables. As the hours go by, he continues to sit there not drinking his drink. Other employees and a couple of managers ask if everything's okay, and he says he's perfectly happy. Every now and then he makes a phone call, and at one point I swear I can see a guy on his phone at a different part of the store talking opposite of the guy at the table. Suddenly I start to feel like there are more eyes on me than I realize. I pull one of my managers to the back and tell him that I'm getting weirder and weirder feelings about the guy, and the manager says we'll keep an eye on him. Now I was closing on this shift, and so as we got closer and closer to closing time, I noticed him still sitting there. When the announcement that the store is closing in half an hour is made, he comes up to the counter and asks if he could walk me to my car after I get off. I tell him our closing duties take us at least 45 minutes after we close, and he says he'd be happy to wait. I politely decline, and he asks when I work next. I tell him I'm off for a couple weeks. "Well, then I feel I should walk you to your car, especially if I'm not going to be able to see you for a couple weeks." No fucking way. I politely decline, and eventually he leaves. I finish my closing duties and head to the employee area. As soon as I get down there, I tell one of my managers about the situation and ask if I can take the side exit from the store. At our store, we exit out one of the main doors after we close, but there's a side door that we use to get into the building before we open and that the managers use to get out after we close. He agrees and tells me he'd walk with me to my car to make sure I'm okay if I'm cool with waiting a little while. I am. So I walk out the side doors with a couple of managers. I get into my car, and as I'm driving away, I see a large van with extremely tinted windows parked in front of the front door. There's no way for me to know for sure if my customer was in that van, and if it was as ominous as I thought it was. But I know that I was not about to stay and figure out, and I took a long and winding path home that night. So, to the very hot guy that I sold coffee to, let's not meet. Unless, of course, I read all of these things wrong and you're just socially awkward and were actually into me and not in a creepy way. But, just to be on the safe side, let's not meet. My Boss Was a Homeless Man by Tinderguy11. Hi everyone. So lately, I've had some requests to finally share the whole story of the homeless man I accidentally took in as a tenant and the incidents that followed. I'm just saying in advance, this is a long one, but every detail is relevant. Please note, although everything I have documented is factual, the case was never solved and is likely gone cold, since this happened more than 10 years ago. So back in 2007, I found myself working as a bartender at a now-closed pub in my hometown. Not a job I particularly liked, but it paid the bills. At this time, they had hired a new kitchen manager that we all simply knew as Kearney. Kearney was a pleasant enough man, mostly keeping to himself, but always stayed late to help the barman do our closing duties, so we all liked him for that. New in town, Kearney had yet to find a place of permanent residence, and I had recently lost my tenants. New in town, Kearney had yet to find a place of permanent residence, and I had recently lost my tenants, so someone suggested he ask me. He was considerably older than the tenants I usually took in, but having had a streak of bad luck with my tenants my own age, I thought an older man with a nice steady job may be a shift in the right direction, so I agreed. Kearney wasted no time and followed me home that very same night, only he wasn't alone. Enter Lawrence, the boyfriend of Kearney. Honestly, I hadn't even realized he was gay up to that point, but was water off my back regardless. Looking back now, what really should have bothered me though was Lawrence's appearance. He looked like he had been sleeping on the street, rather appropriately as I would later find out. So Kearney moved in. Lawrence was there a lot too, and it was easy to know when due to his mobile ringtone sounding like the quacking of a duckling. Kearney had some habits that were rather noteworthy to this story in particular. 1. He basically never closed his bedroom door, no matter what he was doing in there. It was always open. And 2. Although he was a very heavy smoker, he never once smoked inside the house. So Kearney had been living there for about 2 weeks when I had come down with an awful case of pink eye. This being highly contagious, I was given leave of absence from my bartending job and therefore decided to go wait it out at my sister's for a few days. Apparently I didn't mind giving it to her. Sorry, sis. So the day my sister was scheduled to come to pick me up, no, I couldn't drive yet, I took a casual stroll into the bar that myself and Ben, my good friend from high school, and at the time co-worker, had been building at my house. And something caught my eye. All our liquor bottles were completely empty. Now those who had been frequenting my house at that time would know that we weren't just talking about 1 or 2 bottles of brandy here, but bottles of whiskey, gin, vodka, schnapps, liqueurs. Basically, it was a fully stocked bar that could host a pretty big party without requiring much in the way of additions. So I called Kearney in, asking him what he knew about this, receiving feedback that Lawrence and he had been on a slight drinking binge. Those were the actual words he used. That had left me both furious about the thousands of dollars worth of stunk they had drunk out, but also slightly impressed that he was actually still alive. Regardless, I said that I will be dealing with this upon my return. So I'm with my sister for a few days, and on Friday I get a call from my local police department, asking me if I knew a Conrad Schultz. Ironically enough, I didn't. They finally add that I would probably know him as Kearney, and that I should probably come down to the station. as they had just arrested his boyfriend trying to sell my camera equipment. So my sister rushes me back to home, where all my camera equipment was on display at the police station. It's on this visit that I'm informed that Lawrence was actually a Navy SEAL who got dishonorably discharged before turning to a life of crime and now had a rap sheet the length of the Bible. The kicker was that both he and Kearney were actually homeless men who had met at the Salvation Army. So Lawrence is in jail, and my sister drops me off at home more or less the same time that Kearney gets back home as well. Based on Kearney's account of what had happened, he had turned Lawrence in himself, as he couldn't allow Lawrence to do to me what he was trying to do. Although I had appreciated his sacrifice, I still told Kearney that he would have to go, having been the overall cause of all this. However, not wanting to leave the homeless, I gave him until the end of the month to make other arrangements. So Monday comes, and having just completed a staff meeting, I walk home to encounter a very much free Lawrence sitting on the sidewalk across my house, watching it. I confront Lawrence as to why he's there, and he tries to apologize before begging for money. Rather out of character, really, I dismissed him without giving him a cent. Now, let's go back to the previous night. See, I had mentioned the staff meeting for a reason, as it was at that meeting where we had gotten a rather sizable list of liquor bottles that had gone missing from the storeroom, leaving us all suspecting each other. I, however, would not have to wait long to figure out who the real culprit was, as a few days later, I opened the garbage bin in my kitchen to see the missing bottles, all empty and staring back at me. I decided to sit on this information for the time being, although I did photograph it, just for in case I needed as evidence later. I had also called over Ben to inform him of the developments. As this was quickly becoming a detective game, we decided to enter Kearney's room to search for further evidence. Nothing of vast significance in there, with one exception. 2 single photographs of Lawrence before he had turned into the homeless version of Lex Luthor or Charles Xavier. Actually, there were several of Lawrence's things still there, but as Lawrence had spent a lot of time there before the incident, I accepted this as normal. Now I should also add that I had mentioned Lawrence's release to Kearney, and had told him that if I even suspected that they were still seeing each other, I would throw him out of the house myself. Only a few days would pass before this came into play. On this particular night, I had been bartending again, and Kearney had constantly been stopping by the bar to help himself to draught glasses half full of wine and half full of Coke, which he would go drink outside the restaurant. We confronted him about this, but as he correctly pointed out, he was still a manager and we had no right to tell him what he could or could not do. On his 4th trip, however, I had grown suspicious and decided to follow him outside, where I encountered Lawrence sitting outside, sharing the half Coke, half wine concoctions with Kearney. This pissed me off. So the next day I returned to the restaurant with my photographic evidence that I handed over to the general manager, who was also kind of a friend of mine. Although I hadn't physically seen it, I had heard the confrontation through the office door when he fired Kearney. Kearney left, obviously upset, and apparently had no idea that I had been the one who had turned him in. So, we had closed early that night and I was walking home. Going past the high school, I saw Kearney coming from the opposite direction. He walked past me, literally only saying 2 words. "I'm scared," before disappearing into the darkness. That would be the last time I would ever physically lay my eyes on Conrad Schultz. So we reached the final week before Kearney's eviction was to take place. Ben had come to stay with me for that duration, as we both wanted to monitor the situation and make sure that nothing else happens. It was in this week that Kearney's behavior suddenly changed. He was constantly smoking in his room, and his door was closed 24/7. In fact, neither Ben nor I had caught so much as a peek of him in that entire last week, which we hadn't thought much of at the time. So the day of Kearney's eviction comes around. Ben had gone home for a few hours, and I finally hear Kearney's bedroom door open. Someone walks out of the room, opens the front door and leaves. I follow him outside, but somehow he had already completely disappeared. What was left, though, was his house keys, indicating that he obviously wasn't planning to come back. I took a look at the keys, noticing something strange. Although the correct keys were all on the keychain, there were also several that weren't mine. Why would he leave me the wrong keys? I remember myself thinking as I walk into his bedroom. His room was a shock. Not because of the state it was in. The two had broken his bed in an act of wild monkey sex, but I had known about that already. As I said, he never closed his damn door. But more that he had literally left almost all of his belongings behind. With one exception. You guessed it. The 2 photos of Lawrence. Upon further investigation, I suddenly realized that all traces of Lawrence ever being there had completely vanished, with all of Kearney's stuff left behind. There was one thing of Lawrence left behind, though. His duckling ringtone. Which it turned out hadn't been so much a ringtone as an actual duckling, which now strolled around casually in the vacant bedroom. We named him Neville. So Ben returns and gets updated about the developments, both of us thinking the way he had left was rather weird. Of course, the whole thing had been weird. It was only when I had asked the infamous question that this all became a conspiracy theory. Did you ever actually see Kearney in this last week? It was to our shock that we realized that neither of us had. Suddenly putting puzzle pieces together, the changing habits, Neville the duck, the wrong keys, only Lawrence's stuff being gone. It was to great discomfort that we both asked the question. Who had really been living in our house this last week? During the next few days, Ben and I went on a mission, searching the town, crawling into drain pipes, trying to find any trace of Kearney's whereabouts, but they all added up to nothing. Conrad Schultz had simply vanished off the face of the earth. That wasn't the case with Lawrence, though. No, he was still around, having made some new homeless friends. We encountered him several times begging on the streets. I asked him every time, "Where's Kearney, Lawrence?" But he had just acted like he never heard of him. The last time I would see Lawrence was across from work attempting to break into a car. I had called the police on him and they had arrived rather quickly, arresting him on the spot. While he was being led away by the police, I shouted after him one last time, "Where's Kearney, Lawrence?" But he just ignored me and let the cops drag him away. The next day I filed a police report, reporting Kearney as a missing person and suggesting that Lawrence may know something about it. But nothing ever came of it. So Lawrence, I don't know if you did something to Kearney or not, but if you did, let's not meet again. Someone Always Rings My Door at 11:05 a.m. by Azalea. I'll be honest, I'm not 100% sure if this story belongs on this Reddit, seeing as I've never actually met this person. But I have no other subreddit that I know of where this could fit better. Since almost a year now, end of 2019 to be exact, I have moved to an apartment in a different city because my mother, who I lived with in my hometown, passed away from cancer. I have moved here with my long-term boyfriend and one other roommate, who has been a good friend for both of us since before we'd even started dating. We all absolutely love it here. The location is great, it's a 15-minute bike ride from my university, and it's located at a square with a grocery store, drugstore, lunchrooms, etc. So we pretty much have everything we could possibly need to survive within walking distance. However, after just a month or two of living here, someone has started to ring my doorbell at exactly 11:05 p.m. semi-regularly. Sometimes every day, sometimes every other day. Sometimes there's a week in between, and sometimes there are a couple weeks in between. But it is always at around 11:05 p.m. And every single time, I get no answer each time I ask through the intercom who it is. Except for one time, but I will get to that in a bit. At first, I thought it was friends from one of the neighbors who accidentally rang the wrong doorbell. But after around the 4th time, I grew suspicious. And after more than those 4 times, I started noticing that it always happens at either exactly 11:05 p.m. or a few minutes earlier or later. My boyfriend and roommate both work at bars, so they work until very late and would usually only get home around 2 a.m. So each time it happened, I was always alone at home, and it really started to freak me out after a while. When I first told them about it, they kind of shrugged it off and said that it was probably a wrong dial, like I thought at first. But when I told them that it has happened so many times and sometimes even daily, they didn't even believe me and thought I was just a little paranoid and spooked. However, one night, when the doorbell rang again, and I answered the intercom asking who it was, I heard very heavy breathing. I was thoroughly spooked at that moment. I was again home alone and kept asking who they were and what they wanted. I couldn't make out from the breathing if it was a man or a woman, but I heard strange mumbling or whispering, and then it was dead silent, and they had appeared to have left. I had put my apartment door on double lock after that. I was so scared and spooked out. Thankfully, my roommate got home a little earlier that night, around 30 minutes after the doorbell rang, and he could tell how upset I was. Now, with the corona crisis, my roommate and boyfriend aren't able to work anymore, and they now also witness the frequent doorbell ringing. And they now also witness the frequent door ringing at 11:05 p.m., so they now do believe me and agree that it is very odd and creepy. We have a balcony that looks down at where our apartment building's main front door is. But because there's also a shop right underneath us that always has those curtain roof things out, the view to the door is partially obscured. Every time our doorbell rang, me, my boyfriend, and roommate would all go to the balcony to see if we could see anyone, but we never could. I have also asked my neighbors from my apartment building if their doorbell also gets rang so often, but the ones that I asked all said that it has never happened to them. So 2 weeks ago, my roommate decided to do some investigating and went outside our apartment building at 11 p.m., standing across the street and pretended to have a smoke while keeping an eye on the door. He said he did see a man who looked kind of suspicious wandering around the apartment building, who slowed down his pace significantly as soon as he approached our door. But when he spotted my roommate looking at him, he quickly walked away. We aren't 100% sure if that's the door ringer, but that was very, very suspicious. Our doorbell hasn't been rang at night since that day, and I'm hoping that maybe it will stop now. But there is a possibility that it will continue again in a few weeks. So strange man who rings my doorbell at 11:05 at night so often, please stop. And let's please never meet. Grindr Horror Story by Sir Clorox. This happened 2 days ago. I live in a small city in Romania, around 30,000 inhabitants. Romania isn't exactly known for their tolerance of gay people. It's not as bad as other places, such as Russia, but the situation is definitely not rosy here either. I get on Grindr and meet a guy, 18 years old apparently. The guy didn't have a picture of his face as his profile pic, because it's too dangerous. He had a picture of a rose drawing. Most guys on Grindr here don't have pictures of themselves. We talked for a bit, and I really liked the guy. And then we finally agreed to exchange face pictures. I sent him a selfie of myself, and he sent a picture of a guy from our city. He was cute, and I really, really liked him. So I told him, "Hey, I saw you around the city. Didn't know you were gay too." We talked and finally arranged to meet. I had some errands to run at the tailor shop. My cousin's bachelorette party is coming next week, and I had to adjust my favorite shirt, so I asked him to meet in front of the tailor shop. The building in which the tailor shop is located has 4 stories. The ground floor is a clothes shop, which my aunt works at. The first floor is a storage room. The 3rd floor is a barber's salon. And the 4th floor is a tailor shop. I go to the tailor shop and then go to the clothes shop on the ground floor to visit my aunt and see how she's doing. As I was looking out of the window of the clothes shop, I noticed there were 5 men, all of them in their late 20s behind the building, and none of them even looked remotely close to what the guy looked like. I text the guy I was supposed to meet and ask him if he made it to the tailor shop. As soon as I send the message, one of the 5 guys' phones lit up, and he started texting. As soon as he stopped texting, I got a notification from Grindr. I'm behind the tailor shop. I went there to smoke so no one would see me. Come smoke with me. I was terrified as I realized I wasn't going to meet the guy in the picture. He tries to get me to go behind the tailor shop, and I try to get him to come to the side of it. There were no windows to the side of the building, so after a few tries, he agreed to meet at the side of the tailor shop. All 5 guys went to the side of the tailor shop. I peeked my head from the door, looked left and right, and as soon as I saw my way was clear, I ran for it. Grindr cutie, let's not meet. Wow, you made it to the end. I'm impressed. This is my first venture into the true stories category. Let me know how I did in the comments down below and leave a like if it pleased you. I also recommend ringing the bell if you just can't bear to miss one of my stories. If watching a video is beneath you, I also upload my stories to the SilverThread podcast. If there's a story you feel I must read, then send it to storiesforsilverthreads@gmail.com. Thank you all for listening, and I'll see you next time with another story.